We are live on Author Talk Live.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure,
author
Carolyn.
Ziad MATTA. Welcome today.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you, Caroline.
I'm so excited. We're excited. Oxygen's excited. We've been working with you on the co-creation from your imagination for a while now. Why don't you show us what this incredible book is called on Author Talk? And we're going to ask you to tell us about The Impossible Departure, which is Raheel. Tell us a little bit about what that actually means.
Oh, it's a very, very big question that you are raising.
And it's a question that I think people have because they may not be clear on the impossible departure part. Yes. Raheel, what does that actually mean?
Raheel is the forced departure. So the real title is The Forced Departure, which is an impossible departure. So when you think about it, there's a paradox in the story. But if we go back to the idea is not an idea about a book or a project or a presentation. It's something that concerns everyone who left his birthplace. The other people who did not leave or didn't have the chance to leave can imagine also to find themselves in the situation, because we're talking about a geographical departure. We're talking about a departure from a culture to another. And the big question is, if we take a hypothetical situation, you are born in a place. We are all born somewhere. Some of us will have the chance to be born in a place, to grow up there, and after a long time, to end their life or to die in that place. It doesn't take any question that this particular person comes from a very particular place. And the story ends here. We all love our birthplace. This is normal. This is where we grew up, the first place when we walked. You even kiss the earth because you will fall as a child. So this relationship to the soil is something that it's unavoidable. That's not something to be discussed, I would say. Now, the question is, what if you are born in one particular place? In my case, it's my birth country, Lebanon. You grow up there. You gather all these paintings from your life, memories, all the first experiences in life, the beautiful part, the other part that we call experience with time. And then after a while, either you choose to leave or you are forced to leave. And the outcome was more or less the same. Then you go to an adopted country where you will work. Very likely you will succeed. Otherwise you wouldn't stay. You create a new life. So if we push it a little bit more, you raise a family, you have a relationship, and those children that you will be raising will be born either in the adopted country or maybe in I would say, the root or the source country. So the key question is, after some time, 1 decade, 2 decades, who are you exactly? Are you the person who comes from that country of birth? And the question is probably not. Because after 1, 2 decades, 3 decades, the country changes, the people at your birthplace change, and you do change also at the same time. And the second option, are you part fully of your adoptive country? And the question is probably not fully, because you will never match this link that gathers somebody who was born in that adoptive country, which is not yours. So at some point you will ask yourself, who am I? Am I a nomad? Am I someone with a mixed or lost identity? And I think this is a beautiful journey. And the book, Raheel, if it talks about something, it's mainly about that. The conclusion or the message I would like to spread is that geographic departure is meaningless in the rule of belonging. We can visit all the continents, all the countries in the world, have all the successes and failures that we are supposed to have. Success, go through many failures first. This is normal. But by the end of the day, we are who we are. And I believe that part of the happiness is by endorsing your true identity. And this is not an easy task. It's easier said than done, because remember, it's not an impossible departure. It's a forced departure that became impossible.
The premise of this book has intrigued and delighted us from the get-go, right? From the first time we met, from the first time your team put together, all of the elements that came from you and were integrated and formed into this, what we call literary art. we don't refer to books simply as books because books, they take on a life of their own. They're like children. They're born to a story, and then that story evolves. So the book, the essence of the book that evolves over time through the process that an author goes through and then publishes, and then what happens next is, very much attached to the energy that the author has brought to this material. So not only have you authored a book, but you've integrated other stories into this book. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I was not sure it's going to become a book by the end of the day. I remember our early conversations. We were talking about something else the first time we met, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you exactly why I have written this book. I cannot tell you how it started. I don't think that, or at least in this particular experience, it wasn't like, great, I decided to write a book, let me get a pen or a keyboard and start to do that. The real trigger, I cannot describe it. All I can tell you is that I'm blessed to be born in what I believe one of the best countries in the world, one of the most attaching countries in the world. I love it sometimes, I hate it other times, but it has one particular specificity. This country can never leave you indifferent. There is always something big happening, very big, to the point that sometimes you ask yourself, how is it possible for such a small geographic nation, not small at the level of, I would say, a nation in terms of the diaspora and the presence and the history. How is it possible for such a small geography to have this number of incidents and headlines most of the times?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a journey that began by interacting with people, because I believe that we will very quickly discover, to whoever we talk on this planet, that we start any conversation by being completely different, trying to find common ground for understanding and communication, but quickly we understand that we're not different at all. The one and the other are always the same, regardless where this person is, regardless of the continent, the country, the job, the culture, the background. We are human beings. I'm not trying to do poetry here, but I was blessed in my job to move between countries. And I can tell you, most of the teaching that I got, or the preparation that I got about the nation I was visiting, were wrong. Most of it, because we cannot dissociate ourselves from stereotypes. If you go to that country, you do this, you do that. This is important to know. But in reality, when sometimes we call a nation less emotional and another nation more emotional, I think this is one of the most misleading ideas ever. So that's just as an example. So to go back to your point, this journey is a trip at many levels, but most of all, it's a trip among people's stories. Okay? They have many things in common. They are related to Lebanon somehow. They are Lebanese. It's not necessarily that they are living in Lebanon. It's not necessarily they are living abroad, but they have very interesting stories to tell, or life story even. And I would like to note one thing. As far as I know, none of the people that I had the privilege to interview, to exchange with them, to note the reflections or the feelings I had about it, none of them are involved in some particular political or commercial interest, which is the plague that's eating the nation. So I'm very proud that I met these fantastic people, and I want to salute them here during my conversation with you.
I think that's so appropriate and so important to note, because, this is all the essence of their stories. And from that original idea that became a book, that became a shared story idea, you've evolved now into a website where you encourage other people to share their stories, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what's moving you forward at such a powerful rate. So you've shared this book amongst colleagues, peers, you've had some readership. I know the feedback has been tremendous. I know you've had some wonderful media support for really the true meaning of what this book means to you is clearly been written in a way where you have exemplified it to other people and they're feeling that feeling. And I think that that's always the most important part of a book. We are in touch as authors with our readers' emotions while we tell a story, creating a path forward for people. So not only have you created a book, which let's touch a little bit on the art in your book. Maybe if you can share quickly the cover of your book and tell us a little bit about where the artwork comes from. So who your illustrator and artist is in this book, and the art that's showcased through this book has a particular meaning to you as well.
Absolutely. I just would like to note something about what you mentioned about offering the possibility for people to share their stories. The world is full of platforms. I don't think the world needs anyone new to invent something for people to share the stories. I mean, every evening we're connecting to this or that platform. What I discovered, and that was very overwhelming and rewarding at the same time, is that people are waiting for one thing. They are waiting to talk about beauty in a world where we hear very less about it. I mean, if we take our normal day or usual day, we are fed on daily basis by negative news. I'm not saying they are wrong news. This is not what I'm claiming. But unfortunately, bad news are attractive. They are catchy. And I'm like everybody else on this planet. If there was a transmission about the latest Nobel Prize or the explosion that happened, I don't know where, very likely I will stay to watch the disaster more than the fantastic reward that's taking place. What I discovered with this experience is that despite this sad truth, the truth that we are living within this world of media that's taking us in all this and that direction, and it's a big topic. The beauty of this discovery is that people are very fond of hearing about beauty. It doesn't take promotion. It doesn't take a media investment. When you bring a beautiful story, especially a story that's related to them or to people they know or to people that they resemble. And this is very important because the frame of the book is about stories from and about Lebanon. But I can tell you that the majority of people to whom I had the chance to share what I'm writing were not Lebanese. And the beauty that they discover, that the same feelings, the same experiences, the same identity question concerns every one of us. We are all moving on this planet. We are all leaving family, we are leaving territory and so on. And by the end of the day, it's the same feeling, the same situation, the same reaction to what is happening. So what I have done is that with the help of many people who contributed to this project, and I wish I could salute every one of them, we have created this platform, the wordsandImages.art, which tells some of the stories from Raheel, but also has a specific place where everyone on this planet can upload his or her story. One thing is a fact. Every one of us has a story to tell.
That's correct.
You agree? I think you're very well positioned to tell the world this particular aspect. But maybe not everyone is into writing a book about it or making an article or publishing it. People have different ways of expressing. Some, you talk about the illustration, we'll probably talk about that now, but we have our different ways of telling it. We are storytelling creatures by the end of the day. And what's fantastic is that when people understood why this is taking place, why we are writing about a small nation called Lebanon, about some of the Lebanese diaspora in the world that are not different from any other individual on this planet, they immediately felt that they belong to the story and they brought their stories also. If you connect today, you see stories that come from different sides, different countries, people living here and there. And I can tell you some of them can give you the chill because you see that there are stories and there are hidden stories in the memory. And the beauty is that once you write this hidden story, you upgrade it to the level of written history. And nothing is more noble than that because this is ageless. In decades, in centuries from now, whatever part that was written, somebody else will discover it, regardless of who we are. It doesn't need to have an author's name, but it is exactly like what was found in the caves of the early humans. This hand, I was here. So writing, and I'm not at all an expert, I'm an amateur writer, and I'm proud to be that. Writing, I believe, is part of this art that you mentioned that could be, you will correct me at some point, I would love to, could be one of the major, if not the only, proof of our existence on this planet. That's a possibility. And it's fantastic because the people that are reacting, most of them, I have no idea who they are.
That's right.
But I know that it's emoting something in them. This is the beauty of what happens.
Yes, that's absolutely the beauty of all of it. And you never know when you will inspire another human. And that's one of the reasons that we put our words to paper from our imagination. I often tell people, I'm just the scribe, right? I'm the conduit to which the words come to and through onto the paper. It's divinely driven. It's inspired thought that comes through us and onto the page. And then we let that work through us and create stories from that. So you're right. When you imprint it, it's there. And it says, I was here.
Exactly. I was here. Now, for Raheel, the impossible departure, I was blessed because someone who's, I consider him my own nephew, he's a young artist, and he likes to have a glimpse of every art. Mm-hmm. He's a painter, okay? He's studying, he's in art school right now, and he discovered the first part of the manuscript, even from the very early pages. And suddenly, in a way that I cannot explain, okay, he was just asking to have a glimpse of that also, to read it. And while I was writing, he was drawing in parallel. So somehow it became a co-creation of words and images. And this is the reason why we created that website called Words and Images, because by the end of the day, if you put the audio aside, the music, everything we express other than the audio is words and images. And by the way, words and images has audio also, it has music. So it was a co-creation between a drawing and between a word. And then this beautiful marriage between the two created Raheel. And I believe this is a major driver behind the effect it's having on everyone who's discovering it.
I love that. Why don't you just share with us your book cover?
So I'm proud to show you the cover. And what you see here is a bay from Beirut, this fantastic city, the city that I will always be proud of, and that will always be my city, like everybody else. And it invites everyone to discover the beauty it has to offer. I know that we stereotype sometimes when we hear Saigon, when we hear Beirut. We all know there's a lot of recent history behind it, but here we're talking about a place that has witnessed almost everything on the shores of this beautiful Mediterranean. And you will discover part of that also in Raheel. So I wish and I hope you will have the chance to discover that. You too, Caroline, you haven't been there yet.
No, I have not been there yet. Would you do us the honor of reading the back cover of your book, which is the story of the story?
It's a pleasure, of course.
Yes.
So Raheel, the fourth departure, the impossible departure. Raheel is a journey around stories from Lebanon, where the present is a constant echo of the past. Despite their diversity, all these stories carry a common scent of love to a land treasured by all, even by the few who try not to. Raheel is a journey that makes geography irrelevant in the circle of belonging, as the act of leaving or that of staying can never change who we truly are. This journey seeks rediscovering an identity, the kind one needs to understand when seeking the truth. Raheel is a transportation to a world where resilience and loyalty constantly feed the passion flame of belonging, which makes the impossible departure also an unwanted one. The entire premise for this book is it's inspiring, but it draws together so many elements. It's a multifaceted, multidiscipline experience. Okay, so I encourage people who are watching to go to the website that's above or below this recording, and it will have a direct link to experience Raheel, the book, but the words and the images and some of the music that's been integrated for your enjoyment. So as you move through this website, which most people associate with being a place to learn more about an author, this is a place that's far grander than that. So I encourage you to visit the website so that you can experience not only the book, but the images, the art, the music, and the international launch day for this book is on the 4th of October. It's coming around. You can pre-order your copy, visit the website, not only to purchase a book and to experience it in the tactile sense, but go there to experience all of the sensory parts of this book that have been brought to life on this extraordinary website. You are looking forward to a lot of
different conversations, Ziad, with many people you've had the privilege of speaking to already. How are you feeling about how this book is taking on a life of its own?
You're summarizing it well by saying it's taking a life on its own. I don't know who is following us right now live, but if I may say a word to people who are still hesitant, shall I go for it or not? I can tell you, I don't come from a literature background. I come from a completely different background, as you know. How it started, I cannot tell you. Why it started, of course, there are those big events that always happen that drive something in us. But what I can say that people should never hesitate. Just take a pen, a paper, keyboard, whatever allows you to express yourself, go for it. I'm sure that based on this growing experience that's happening, people are waiting for someone to tell their stories and to invite them that they tell their own stories at the same time. What will happen after, or to how many people it will reach, I can say that it's a pleasure first to always discover, because there's beauty, this dopaminergic feeling when you don't know what will happen tomorrow. So right. I can tell you I'm enjoying this a lot, but for sure, this is a growing experience. And what's extremely rewarding is that there are people that I have no idea where they are living, what do they do, but they send you the small word, the small word, just one sometimes, or short sentence that makes your whole day. Because after all, what matters is that we discover a journey about people that we don't know, about a country that probably we'll never visit, we never heard about, but we discover that we are extremely similar at many levels. And I think, I don't want to exaggerate and tell you that the world will be a better place if this happens, but for sure, we'll be able to understand each other better and feel each other's pain and beauty at the same time. And nothing is more noble than that.
I totally agree with you. That is a perfect summary of what the essence of all of this is about coming together of people, sharing stories, and learning how we're more similar than we are different. Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
And especially during these days, I think we need that.
I think you're right. It's a perfect opportunity for people to learn a little bit more about themselves through the stories of other people. And I know that your book achieves this, and I know this is, when people consciously choose to put a pen to paper, as you say, and start putting a story from their head onto the paper, you don't know the journey that you're about to embark on. And what I often reveal to authors when they're ready to hear it is that had I told you that this journey was more about your transformation than a book, people don't realize that the process that you take, the journey that you go on as an author, as a writer, as a creator, has so much to do with your own transformation. And through the process of writing and sharing, we all transform a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I think we transform also the documented history.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the day, if everyone has his part of the story or stories to tell, this is part of the unwritten history, which confirms on its own that the biggest part of history is not written. Yeah. And when you think about this historical documentation, it's something very attractive. We all like to know more, to discover more, especially the hidden part, but also it's very dangerous because whatever you write is automatically part of history, from a primary reference to a secondary reference and so on. So this is, I would say, the dangerous or tricky part of it. But on the other hand, what happens if you don't write it?
That's right.
It will be transmitted via few generations. And we all know that nothing is transmitted 100% as it happens. And sometimes, you're exposed to these situations where you meet the very last person who could tell you that story.
Yes.
And in Raheel, I had the chance, at least on one of the occasions, to meet the very last person who could tell a story that I'm very, very proud for having had the chance to document that. So this is why every day counts. Okay. And what's fantastic about documenting this part of the stories and histories, that once you hear it, it will always be somewhere. Yeah. And it only takes one conversation, some years after or many years after, to trigger such awakening that allows you to put it and make it part of history. And nothing is more beautiful than that.
Listen, this is a tremendous project that has come alive in so many ways. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
And the story, the stories, the art, the images, everything that makes this book so powerful, an experience for people to have. So if you're watching and you are completely, intrigued by this conversation and want to know more about Ziad, please go to his website. It is here for you to enjoy. Order a copy of the book, immerse yourself in it, have an experience with it, learn about the stories that he shared with you, and then maybe have the courage to share your own. So Ziad, is there anything you'd like to say in closing about where you're feeling the most pride in this particular part of your journey?
I have to go back to my true feelings about my country of birth, this fantastic place called Lebanon. People hear many stories, many things, but there are two facts. And when I say facts, meaning what people are telling, people tell facts. The first one is that I never met one person who told me, I hate that place. I'm talking about those who were forced to leave. Mm-hmm. Not one of them said, I don't love Lebanon. Mm-hmm. They said, I'm angry against this country. This country will exhaust you. Some people even use the terms, I'm tired of being Lebanese. And this is true, because when you live remotely or closely, every other 5-10 years, a huge event, such the explosion of 2020 in August. Of course, you'll be tired of being Lebanese, but once again, not one person mentioned or felt that he doesn't love that place. The second thing, whenever a friend who lives elsewhere, Europe, US, coming from those countries, he's not part of the diaspora, discovers the feeling of being in Lebanon during good days or bad days, crisis, turmoil, this will never stop. It has always been there. When they have a touch of the feeling of being in Lebanon, they always come back, despite all the challenges that are taking place. Mm-hmm. You asked me what I'm proud of or what's my feeling. I'm proud of one thing, that by the exchange with all the people I met, and again, I salute them all. They are fantastic people, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk about every one of them one day. The feeling I have and the pride that I kept in mind is that they were all telling fantastic and beautiful stories about this country. Fantastic. And this led me somehow to revisit stories from history. I will just conclude with one. Today, Lebanon is living a very difficult situation. Geographically, it is supposed to do that, because I can tell you, take any country and put it on that spot on the planet, very likely it will live the same crisis Lebanon is in. By the end of the day, history is the daughter of geography, so we know how it happens. So when I look at the situation that Lebanon is living and so on, and what's going to happen, the question is, do we have a chance? Are we able to change? Everything is lost. These are words that you hear most of the time. Just it's enough to revisit the silk production story from Lebanon in history, which happened during very harsh occupation times, during the Ottoman Empire, where nothing was left. Europe is boycotting the Ottoman Empire. The people living in the mountains, every crop, every resource is confiscated in the name of the ongoing war at the time. And what did these people do? That was much more challenging than today. They were able to build a full economy based on what? On a silk producing worm that never even grew on that land. It came through the Silk Road. So through one worm, they produced silk. They exported silk to Europe with a specific deal with the city of Lyon in France that was dressing Europe royalties. And this created monetary exchange, maritime exchange. This brought European, especially French, as expats later on to this growing business, which brought the French culture in schools, in hospitals, in wine production. So when you think about it, the same nation that produced all this through one word can produce much more today, despite all the challenges. And if this message is received by the world, especially by those who can make the change, I think that this will be the best reward for me.
Well, that certainly is a word or more of pride. So I think that's fantastic. And thank you for sharing all of it and yourself with us today. Thanks for telling us more about this book that is now taking on and shaping a life of its own. And to anyone watching, go and connect with Ziad. He's on social, he's on Instagram, find him on LinkedIn, on Facebook, all the social platforms. Go say hello, go introduce yourself. He'd be glad to know you. He'd be glad to tell you a little bit more about his book. Go and connect with him, connect with his website, connect with his book, and then reach out and tell him how you felt about that. I think that's how we all share our stories, by connecting at that deeper level. So really a pleasure to have you and this discussion today. And congratulations on your book.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Thanks a lot for the Oxygen team. You're fantastic people.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Linda, who I'm sure she's following us. I love that girl. She's great.
She is.
And she has a lot of fantastic stories. And I think I'll write one soon about her. That's it.
Okay.
Of course, Charles and Richard for all the work they have done. And I'm very blessed that I met you and that you helped me in making this project a concrete thing that people can touch, feel, and live. And it's a big privilege for me. So thanks a lot for that.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and it's our pleasure and our privilege to work with you and watch this come to life. It's been a great sense of pride for us as well. We've all enjoyed working on it, all the different parts of this that create the pathway to a published book, and a team of people that really do love what they do and love what they experience through the written word. So thanks for giving us the privilege of working with you. We appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, well, here we go with Author Talk Live with Ziad MATTA. He is in pre-sale. You can go and learn more about his book. Go over to his website and reach out to him on social. And we will see you next time on Author Talk Live. Bye for now.
Thanks, Caroline.